How do you grow in your sport? If you're a runner, it's a faster time or longer distance. Climbing, harder ascent. Bigger peak, longer trail, steeper climb. Usually, growth is relatively straightforward. Push harder, reap the reward. Tangible, controlled risks. But in some outdoor sports, growth can be jarring and even dangerous. Take whitewater kayaking. 1 second you're having the ride of your life, and the next you're torn from your boat, getting pummeled by unseen rocks, logs, and the power of millions of gallons of water. It's a sport where growth comes from calculated risk and experience from reading and navigating unseen hazards. Well, that's my perspective, but I'm not a kayaker. Here's Leif. He is.
The way I look at it is there's definitely a chance you could get hurt or die kayaking. Whitewater always has its hazards, but there's a chance I could sit home on the couch and not do anything and get a heart attack and die too.
Sounds reasonable, right? This is Beyond Adventure.
I think there's pictures of Rob doing that one. I wonder if that's Horseshoe Rapid, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that that's ridiculously hard.
I am over here at Wenatchee, Leavenworth area. We're going to paddle on Icicle Creek in Whitewater Canyon. I'm kayaking with Daniel Shaw. He's a friend of mine that I've met through kayaking. Seems to be a really good boater. Everything I've paddled with him is very competent, and I know he has a bunch of skill in raft guiding and how to read whitewater and stuff. So I feel comfortable kayaking with him. And when I'm paddling this kind of water, I have to go with somebody that I feel really comfortable with.
What do you think? You think we have time to eddy out?
This waterfall looks a little bit intimidating because it's about 7 feet high. It's not, which isn't too high, but there's a big hole at the bottom of it. And then there's another pour over that looks like it's another 4 or 5 feet with another pour over, and there's a bunch of rocks right around. So if you roll or you tip over or you have to exit your boat right there, you'll have no time to recover. So I think we're going to portage this. In fact, I'm going to portage both these drops, and I'm going to go ahead and run the next one after that.
I don't know, probably. At first, when I first looked at it, I was pretty confident that both Leif and I could do it. Leif decided he wasn't going to do it after we looked at it, and I was still kind of on the fence about it, but it was literally right on top of the next rapid, which was another 4-foot drop. And so there were a lot of rocks in between, and I didn't want to be upside down going over the next rapid. And so we both ended up just deciding to portage around it.
My confidence is a little weak right now. That's why I want to make sure I'm picking pretty easy lines and stuff that's going to be appropriate for me to be running. I've had a few run-ins with kayaking. I got smashed in some rocks one time, hurt my lower back a little bit for 6 months or so, just from rock injury. I dislocated my shoulder. Broke a couple of ribs recently and had a bunch of big hematoma underneath my ribs. And I'm still healing up from that pretty good, so hence I'm feeling a little bit cautious.
When you go climbing, you can only get up a climb that's as hard as your ability is. When you go kayaking, if you put your boat on top of something, it's going to go through it, even if it's way over your head. So there's a lot more objective dangers that we need to worry about.
I really think that's what keeps people alive, when you're able to say, okay, I'm going to walk this one, or I'm going to run it, or I'm not going to run it. I think that's really important in this sport, to be able to do that and say, hey, I don't have to run this time. So I think, to me, that's important.
Here in Washington, they call that a Class 4 run, but I think back in Idaho, that's considered Class 3.
Class 3, yeah. Idaho standards are a little bit hard. But no, I think
No, that was good. That was excellent.
That was a fun run. I've never done Icicle Creek before. I've done a lot on the Wenatchee, but it was down lower than what we're looking at right now. We're gonna try and do the Tumwater section of the Wenatchee, which is some serious big water, Class 5. And so that right now is a lot of it above what my ability is.
Daniel and I have been scouting the Tumwater Canyon. It looks really tough. It looks really big water. And water about doubles in size when you get down on the water. You're actually in it from what you actually see. So some of the holes that look like they're 2 or 3 feet deep could be 4 or 5 or 6 feet deep. The dam looks pretty tough to run, but I've heard it can be fairly straightforward if you run it in the right spot. So we're thinking about running the dam today. So we'll just see. I just don't want to get in over my head.
Tumwater Canyon's a part of the Wenatchee River that I've always heard about and kind of stayed clear of, because it has a lot of Class 5 in it. And especially at high water, I've thought about coming over and running it with some other friends below 2,000 CFS. But today it's running about 35 to 4,000 CFS. And that's pretty high for what most people would do. And so I wouldn't do it unless I had somebody else there that had experience on it. And Leif has a friend named Rob that we're meeting, and his friend Darren, to kind of show us the ropes and take us through it. What do you say, Leif?
I'm gonna put in just below that hole. Okay, cool. We'll meet you there. That's okay.
I've decided to put in halfway down on the wall on that section, just because it's Class 5 and there's some of the stuff I feel like there's just too great a consequence if I swim or tip upside down. I'm just feeling a little bit, just don't feel like I should run that part of it today. So I'm gonna put halfway down on it. Daniel's gonna go ahead and run it with Rob and Darren.
What I like about this stretch is that the water, it's considered big water. The rapids are much bigger than anything you'll find on most other runs around here. You know, most Class 5 runs that people do are on tight, small creeks, and you know, they're running waterfalls and ledges and stuff, which is great. But this has all the power and excitement that, for the most part, creeks don't have.
Somebody that knows their abilities and their limitations, and doesn't let ego play into it. A lot of times, you know, you'll get guys on a run that, you know, the river is beyond their skills. And there's nothing wrong with pushing your abilities a little bit, but knowing what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, and pushing into that comfortable zone slowly is wise. And if you gotta walk.
Trusting Rob was a little difficult for me because I didn't know him that well. He's one of Leif's friends, and Leif's paddled with him a good bit. And he's kind of one of those guys that seems like he's very confident in his ability and confident that other people can do things as well, which is a character that I like. I like to think that I'm a little bit like that too, but sometimes they can get you into stuff that might be over your head. And so I was a little worried about that, a little worried that he didn't know my ability and was just saying, oh, sure, you can do it. And a little tentative in that way, but he did look like he was somebody that could help you out if you got into a sticky situation. I think as soon as I first started the rapid, I knew I was a little bit in over my head. Before the section, I decided that I kind of wanted to try and run the sneak over to the right and miss the big hole. And in cutting over to the right, I ended up spinning my boat around backwards, so it was facing upstream, and didn't have enough momentum and actually ended up getting sucked in backwards. Had at that point, I was nervous and scared, but still kind of holding onto my paddle on my boat. Darren was pretty close to me, and he said, just let your paddle go, swim over to the right. And so I swam over to the right as fast as I could, ended up going through several holes in the meantime, getting sucked under the water and recirculated, and just kind of feeling like I'm getting thrashed. Caught an eddy, just barely, a little 5-foot eddy. That was the only spot where otherwise I'd have kept getting flushed down, and got into that eddy. My boat and paddle went downstream, and Darren and Rob were able to get them off to the side. It was something that could have been a lot worse. If I'd have stayed in the river more, I could have been banged around a lot more. When you're out of your boat, you don't have the protection of your boat, and so the boat kind of blocks you from all the rocks that you're hitting, and when you're in the water without it, you're bouncing on the rocks as you go. And I got a couple of nicks and bruises, but nothing serious, and so I just feel like I was really lucky.
It was kind of scary because it's pretty deep stuff, and you went under the water for a while there, for a few seconds anyhow, and it takes a lot of force to suck somebody clear down with all their life jacket, their PFDs on, you know.
I was still really nervous, and everybody else got in their boats and kind of went downstream, and I still had to get in my boat. So I was sitting there on the side for a little bit, just kind of scared. Ended up getting in my boat, and to get out into the water, there was this big log jam right where I was eddied out, and I had to kind of get around it, and then it put me right into another hole. And so just getting right back in was a little bit intimidating.
The river kind of makes a natural lake. Well, it's not natural, it's because there's a dam across the river. And the dams are roughly 30 plus feet. There's about a 10-foot straight drop, and then it kind of levels out for just a couple feet and then drops another 20-something feet down. So it's pretty much 30 feet. And it looks really intimidating, but I've heard that it's pretty, if you do it right, it's pretty safe and pretty friendly.
Just because of that swim, I was really intimidated. And Leif was paddling across the lake saying that, oh yeah, I feel like I'm gonna do it if Rob does it. And I was kind of like all the way across the lake. I was nervous, and I was like, I don't know if I wanna do it. I'm not sure. I'll maybe go up to the edge of it and decide to go back. And so I was just a little nervous about it.
I'm married and have a 10-month-old son, and there's some risks that I'm willing to take and some that I'm not. And in a hard rapid, you know, I'm comfortable controlling my boat, but that dam, you know, was built 100 years ago out of concrete and rebar, and the concrete's falling apart, and there's rebar hanging out of it in spots, and I don't want to be the first person to find a chunk of rebar, get hurt or killed by it. So just for me, it's a risk that I don't really want to take.
After the dam, there was a good big water class 3 section that empties out into. Then there's a couple of class 4, 5 sections mixed with some big water class 3 plus sections that we did. All of them really challenging, tough, just big water, big holes. Rob and Darren kind of talked us through some of it a little bit, just kind of gave us heads up what's coming up, so that was nice. We asked him about one section. He goes, oh yeah, you just run it like this and that and you're good to go. He moved his hand like that, and so we said, oh, okay, yeah, and we followed along. We found out later that was class 5 section. So he was just trying to help us along, not to get us intimidated too much by going through it. But so we went through it, no problem, no consequence, but it was definitely challenging, and you definitely want to be on your game. So, and both Daniel and I did great. Rob and Darren did great, so the rest of the runs were perfect.
Now I feel much more accomplished. I feel like I'm getting better at kayaking, so I'm kind of still on that learning curve, but it was a very good thing to have gone through, and now I'd feel more confident doing it again. So I feel like I'd want to go with some people that know what they're doing again a few times, and then I'd feel more comfortable to go on it with my other friends that haven't done it before.
Today, running both these rivers was really challenging for me, and especially lately, I haven't been on the water that much this year. In fact, the last 2 paddles I've done have been really mellow, class 2, 3 rivers, just because I've been healing up from my last paddling experience where I broke my ribs. But both these rivers are challenging. Some of them, I would have to say it's some of the more difficult water I've done. And I hadn't done either one of these rivers before, so they're both definitely really, really hard for me. But yet I felt like God blessed me and I did good in it. So I felt like I ran the line straight and worked out really slick.